Welcome, my 378 subs, fans in the front row who don't try to stand out and make the show about themselves, those of you who think we saw the best use of the Eddie Guerrero cheat gimmick, and everyone who thinks that the Blackpool Combat Club should all go to jail for attacking RJ City on his debut. Welcome to my review of AEW Dynamite for the April 26th show. Let's begin. So ratings are up this week, but they had to go up against NBA competition again. And for those NBA games, since I follow that, I bet in some, but I've stopped. The Knicks beat the Cavs, so yeah, sad. Knicks are in the second round. That's so unfortunate. They don't deserve anything good ever. And then Grizzlies beat the Lakers in that game, but eventually Lakers won at time of recording. That's what you get for trash talking the modern day GOAT. Bucks lost to the Heat. Yeah, that's like my Eastern Conference team right there. Losing to Jimmy Buckets. And then Warriors beat the Kings. We have Game 7 actually coming later at time of recording. So yeah, I hope Kings win. If Kings lose, it's just the Nuggets or bust for me. I'm not going to watch anymore. But yeah, that is the update on the NBA playoffs, which are AEW's competition on Wednesdays. So yeah, for the first match of the show, we have Orange Cassidy versus Bandido for the International Championship. So this was the absolute correct match to start the show off with. You have popular dude Orange Cassidy and Phenom wrestler, who looks really, really cool, by the way, in Bandido. This match was worse than I expected. They went for some bad stuff later on, and they don't really have that fast ending that I really like, but it was still really good. There were lots of attempted comedy by Orange, but it's basically mind games now. It's also a part of the match where the opponent, knowing nothing will happen to him or her, knows that they can take a break as well. How are people so dense and narrow-minded? Like this fan in the front row, who was very distracting, especially in the first match. He loved really being animated in his reactions and kept standing up, obstructing the view of the person behind him. But at least compared to the other guy at Long Island, he was actually reacting to the show and not just bringing signs and making the show about something else. So I can't completely hate this Doc Gallows looking guy. So I love the spacing between the moves here. It's better than the one with Jack Perry and Sammy Guevara. There was not much connective tissue between their moves, but here it makes sense. The slow part of the match was very dynamic, since Bandido uses a lawn dart, shoulder block I think from the ropes, and then his rest hold is a stretch muffler. It's a far cry from what Pac does, which is just like headlocks and such. He can really slow down the pace of the match and make it really boring at times. There's much less limb work here than what we've gotten from Orange Cassidy, that we got from his previous matches recently. There's a lot less focus and impact on the limb work. Bandido worked on Orange's shoulder for a bit, and then Orange worked on Bandido's head for a bit as well, but none of those play into the ending. The single arm suplex hold up spots are getting kind of old for me, since we know how this works, right? Like, we know that Bandido isn't really holding him up with one arm. Orange is helping Bandido balance by putting his hand on his knee. It's not really that impressive once you know how things work, but I think like even normal people can see how this works. And yeah, for me, Bandido should just get rid of this. He should do more of the cool stuff that we saw in his four-way against Black Taurus, Laredo Kid, and Rey Fenix. Yeah, that one from Ric Flair's last match. We should have seen more of that kind of Bandido. The two worst moments of the match are these two. So Orange goes for a toss-up cutter, but Orange misses on the cutter a bit, and it didn't look good at all. We still have the toss-up move, so I guess that causes some damage. We just don't get that cutter part, which focuses the damage on the head. So yeah, I guess it still works as a normal move, but not as devastating as compared to if Orange actually hit the cutter. And then another hokey spot is Orange going for a crossbody, even if Bandido was ready for him. He saw it all the way. They went face to face, but Orange still jumped on him, resulting in Bandido catching him. I know they were supposed to look cool, make Orange seem like a badass, but this looked more dumb. There are some moments of miscommunication, some mistiming. There is also a lack of that high-speed balls to the wall finish that I really like. The match was already back and forth. We just needed that oomph in the end, but I think the match ended really good. So it's a launch up Orange punch, followed by a beach break for the win. For me, this is top spot. Number 2 is the one-arm superplex. That's the spot that should be highlighted, and not just the normal delayed suplex. And 3 spot is the comedy battle between Orange and Bandido. Specifically when Orange put Bandido's guns in Orange's pockets. So yeah, post-match, Orange puts over Bandido. He tries to put on his shades on him, but since he's wearing a mask, he has a hard time. This was actually pretty funny. And then they end up being linked throughout the rest of the show. So yeah, for me, this is TV main event, pay-per-view undercard. It was pretty good, but could have been better. So after this is the Adam Cole promo that is completely ruined by audio issues. I did not hear what Renee Paquette asked Adam Cole, and I barely cared for what Adam said. But thankfully, there's a second part to this. Cole leaves, and then Orange and Bandido come in. They just miss Cole by a couple of seconds. Orange kind of wants attention now, wants to be interviewed. This is strange behavior. I thought he didn't care. He's betraying his character a bit. He's starting to become something else. But Renee tells him about Cole, and then Orange just meh. And then Bandido follows him up with his own meh. So yeah, apparently Bandido is Orange's sidekick. There are worse spots to be in. And for a star as talented as Bandido who's contracted to AEW, you would expect him to be higher up in the card, but you have to start somewhere. This is actually the first storyline that he's ever been a part of. Not just a cameo, not just a one-off. He's actually a part of this. So yeah, hopefully we see more of Bandido in storylines. Since it does seem he knows how to speak English, the way he says meh. And I just watched an interview, just now, took a break and then watched an interview. He's actually pretty good at English, so yeah. Hopefully he becomes part of better segments, higher card stories later on. And so after this is the encounter between Jungle Boy and Darby Allin backstage. So they form this small alliance, but passively aggressively insult each other. This affects the outcome of the match later. It's okay, but they need to be better promos. Darby is great when he's great, but really bad when he's off his game. And then Jungle Boy has a ceiling currently. But yeah, again, this is functional. It did its job. Let's move on to the next match. So for the next match, it's Jeff Jarrett against Dax Harwood. So this is the most controversial match of the night. But for me, this was actually really good. I enjoyed the shit out of this, since in keeping with AEW's identity, they offer a variety of styles, and this was an old school match. Literally, if you're a fan of Jim Cornette, if you're a fan of the old style of wrestling, where not much happens, there's a lot of pantomiming, a lot of taunting, basic action, it's not really technical. Dax is there, but what he does is limited by his opponent, who's an old man. Jeff Jarrett can still go, but he never really was much of a technical wrestler. He's more of an entertainer. But that entertaining here, the heel work by Jeff Jarrett was really good. I love their thing at the start where Jarrett tries to do a Fargo strut, but Dax interrupts him every time. He eventually does it, but after many failed attempts. Again, the moves are simple, but it's always a struggle, and the slow part of the match, surprisingly, much better than when Randy Orton has these slow parts with rest holds. Here it's a lot more dynamic working of Dax's torso. There are also some fake outs leading to some simple but smart move setups that are very effective, and honestly, Sammy and Jack Perry could have done this last week and made that match better. Jarrett and Dax work faster than I expected, which is good, but later on in the match, they sort of run out of ideas. And climax falls apart a bit. It loses the fun factor from the first part of the match. So yeah, the worst part of the match is a roll-up where Jarrett really shows his age, a slingshot to the turnbuckle, bounce back, and then Dax falls on Jeff, leading to an awkward ass roll up. It looks pretty natural, like Jeff managed to turn this into a pretty good roll up, but yeah, it looked like they're about to injure each other in the attempting of this simple move. So the finish was a janky as hell interference by Sanjay Dutt. And this here did not make sense at all. This was terrible. Since Remsburg saw Dutt the whole time, he's in his field of view as Dutt is cheating right under the ring. Remsburg loses all of his peripheral vision, and like even Dutt comes in the ring and gets chased around by Dax. And yeah, I forgot to say that early on in the match, Jarrett's faction is escorted out by the referees, so Cash also is not around the place. That should have been an automatic disqualification, since you were already sent out from the start. And then if you come in, that should be a DQ in my book. Like, what was the point of not having them at ringside if after you've sent them out, they can just go in and affect the ending of the match? For me, this was more controversial than the person who won, which I think was the right person to win. You have to build up your challenger somehow. So yeah, Dax ends up chasing Sanjay. He gets put on the stroke for the win by Jeff Jarrett. So yeah, this would have been TV main event, but that ending really sucked so much. It's down to TV undercard. Like, match itself wasn't bad, but the lack of a proper climax and that stupid finish brings down the score. So maybe I'll find somewhere in between TV undercard, TV main event, like a TV semi-main. Or a TV main event if it's a Rampage. So after this is Tony Khan's announcement, and it's kind of minor, since it's about the Owen Hart Cup, but we already know what this is. The wrong people won last year, and it didn't really lead to anything much. Like, that should have been an automatic championship match. It should be like the New Japan Cup of AEW, where the winner gets to challenge any champion. Yeah, I said it. Any champion of that person's choice. Most often, it's going to be the world title, but you can elevate minor belts by having the winner of this challenge for that one instead. Right now, it's just like the King of the Ring. People who win just end up carrying titles that really don't mean anything. The trophy is what matters, and it needs a better reward, really. But yeah, the Owen Hart Cup is a lot cooler this year since it's actually going to take place in Canada, with the finals being at Owen Hart's hometown of Calgary, Alberta. So yeah, Tony Khan's delivery is a lot much better now. He's more comfortable, definitely more rehearsed. He doesn't look crazy in this announcement. So yeah, thankfully, he got better. And for those of you who think that AEW stole Owen Hart from your beloved WWE, that he should be honored there instead, let's not forget that the WWE killed Owen Hart. They killed Owen Hart. He fell because of a stupid idea by the person in charge of the WWE. WWE killed Owen Hart and sued his wife for breaching contract. WWE killed Owen Hart. Let that sink in. So after this is the Wardlow squash. So auto win against the jobber. So Arn still has that promo skills. What an asset for Wardlow to have, since I don't really like Wardlow's promo style. He sounds just like a normal human being, and then Arn sounds like a hustler. But yeah, Arn manages to put over Hobbs, who we find out later is still part of this feud. And then he puts over Wardlow, who he calls a dynasty. Okay, optimistic. Not really a dynasty. Never been a world champion before, but he should have faced MJF this time around. Doesn't really make sense to call him a dynasty if you think about it, but you try your best to put your guy over. He then gives him advice for some dirty tactics, which doesn't make sense since, again, Wardlow's a babyface. And he doesn't need to do this since he's Wardlow. He's a powerhouse. He's not a powerhouse, but he can overwhelm you with his strength alone, and sometimes his high-flying skills. Could this lead to a Wardlow heel turn? Hopefully not. Not until MJF beats him. So right after this, Christian and Luchasaurus come in and then say nothing. Why say nothing? You have one of the best promos in the company, in Christian, who can tear Wardlow a new asshole. But instead they do nothing. They just stare down and then leave. What a missed chance for something magical. I don't know if Christian doesn't have any ideas right now, but come on, next week, something has to happen. Because we still have Hobbs in the feud, as announced later in QTV. So this isn't your usual programming with QTV. It's them licking their wounds. Hobbs is pissed at everyone. He's pissed at QT the most, of course. He should have just dropped them right there, while RJ City is at the back. But he still keeps them. We have Plan B. What the hell is Plan B? Are they gonna set up a three-way? One of Luchasaurus' favorite matches, as we've seen in a former promo. Like, why even keep them? They've run their course. Hobbs should just go back being Eli from the Book of Eli. This is so dumb. And why keep him in the feud? The lack of faith in Wardlow and Luchasaurus is very disturbing. And the non-progression of this feud is kind of worrying. But we have like a month, so hopefully Tony does something. So after this is the complete opposite, which is MJF and Sammy Guevara. What a funny, well done segment. This might be segment of the night. This partnership is so funny and so over the top, and we've yet to see any overt digs at each other, but thankfully that happens much later on. But here, Sammy and Max are just having a fun, homoerotic, sort of keeping this facade going of them being friends, where we know if Sammy actually gets that singles match, there's no way he's lying down. He just wants MJF all to himself. If he's willing to betray Chris Jericho in a four-way, he's willing to betray MJF in singles. But yeah, a lot of kissing and some gift giving. So yeah, real funny. It sets up for the next match. This whole partnership thing between MJF and Guevara is the best thing about this whole feud. First, it was Darby, and now Darby and Jungle Boy have fallen off. It's now Sammy and Max. Basically, whoever Max interacts with is elevated. Hopefully, we have one with Jungle Boy next. So now for the most egregious act by the BCC, and they should be put in jail. This is the most heel thing anyone has done in this company. And it's BCC attacking RJ City as he's about to say something about Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita on his Dynamite debut. Moxley says something after, but that isn't important. What's important is that RJ City has been taken out and there will be no AEW this week. Tragedy. Absolute atrocity. And man, he even sells it off camera as well as he does on camera. So yeah, after this is Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara. So this starts with MJF and his Kalen and Kalen kosher pickles, which are priced outrageously high. It's $25 for pickles with a sticker on the jar. Like, what are you even doing with your money if you're willing to spend on this? I mean, I like pickles, but $25. That's like 1,000 plus of my currency, where it's supposed to be a third of that. What's going on here? Why the price? And why aren't there any Kalen and Kalen pickles in Asia? Asking the right questions. But for the match itself, I think Darby and Sammy have much better chemistry than the match last week with Sammy and Jack. I love the chain wrestling at the start, with Darby consistently going for a headlock takeover. It's a bit of an obsession thing since MJF beat him with one, technically with cheating, but that has to do something to you. This is mixed with some luchador stuff, but Darby still gets those takeovers. And as for MJF on commentary, he is so distracting from the match. Like, I sometimes forget to watch the in-ring and just listen to Max as he argues and insults the other commentators, but at the same time, he adds so much more. So much more context and a lot more backstory to what's happening than with just the commentators alone. The match's domination phase is also dynamic, similar to the other matches on the show, but there is a bit of a problem here. Sammy gets too much offense off that after doing all of that to Darby, it should have ended with a pinfall victory, since Darby gets zero offense from the mid-match on. Some insignificant stuff, but nothing like what Sammy does. And it kind of doesn't make sense how close it is by the end. So yeah, we have an outside moonsault by Sammy, a frog splash, a three amigos, an outside dive cutter counter, and then an avalanche Spanish fly in order to set up a 630 to the outside through a table. That's a finisher on a table. Sammy should have won. Darby should not have been moving after. He does some pretty good selling when he attempts to do a coffin drop and then like struggles a bit, but that's like 3 moves back is the proper selling of that. Now he should have been just on the floor or just having trouble walking. And there should have been more cheating, I think. Since you hit all of this on Darby and then you have to resort to what eventually becomes the finish, which is actually really good. I like the finish. Since it's the Eddie Guerrero, oh, I pass a weapon to you, I pretend to get hit. But here, unlike how Eddie did it, probably because this is the first time in AEW that this happened that I remember, doesn't happen every week like Eddie Guerrero. Paul Turner actually disqualifies Darby. Since back in the day when Guerrero did this, they always like just pause and talk. The ref actually doesn't believe that Guerrero's opponent hit him, so the opponent never gets DQ'd. But here it makes so much more sense since in the referee's mind, Darby hit Sammy. So that should be a DQ. And this doesn't happen often, so it's absolutely believable. I'm not saying that Sammy Guevara does Eddie Guerrero's things better. I'm saying it's a lot more well booked and a lot more realistic because the referee would DQ someone. It could be that it's Eddie Guerrero's reputation in kayfabe. That's why the referees think twice. They wave off the call. But this is how you do it. It's a bit of blasphemy, but of course, Eddie Guerrero does the actual act better. It's a lot funnier, but a lot less convincing since he does it with comedic intent, and it's harder to convince a referee when you do that, and consistently. So yeah, for top 3 spots of the match, number 3 is the low blow by Sammy to Darby on the apron, and then this sets up for the moonsault. Number 2 is the outside cutter counter, and then number 1 is the 630 to the table down below. So yeah, this match has some structural problems. Like, too much domination from Sammy. But I can't say this was bad or anything. TV main event, pay-per-view undercard. If this was just more evenly matched, this would have been pay-per-view undercard upwards. This is match of the night so far. So post-match, we have an attack on Darby. But then Jack Perry shows up, saves his ass, and then I like how Darby's incensed. Jungle Boy didn't even try to help him. And this makes sense, since earlier on, he insulted Jungle Boy, resulting in the late save. Jungle Boy's just there to say he helped, but he didn't help when he was needed most. I love how MJF just buries the both of them, shove a banana up your ass, and then go back pleasuring yourself with your tears while listening to My Chemical Romance. Fire lines. And then go back to the undercard where you belong. Such a burn, amazing lines. But of course, we saw it coming from a mile away. Tony Schiavone announces a second chance match for Darby and Jungle Boy. It was either that or a double countout. And if you think about it, I think if we get this sort of explanation from Jungle Boy, that he saw this coming, like this is consistent of Tony Khan and MJF's relationship, that if he helped Darby earlier, that if Darby won, that main event would have been 1-on-1. If Sammy won via MJF cheating, that would trigger this exact result from Tony Khan. So this is the most beneficial route for Jungle Boy. This is the only way he gets in that championship match. And I would love an explanation like that next week. So yeah, next week, tag match, Jack Perry and Darby Allin against MJF and Sammy Guevara. Of course, faces are going to win. It's going to be a 4-way. We know what's going to happen. So after this is MJF and Sammy backstage. And I love that it's a continuation. It's right after the match. It's so impromptu. And they stay in character. I love how MJF addresses the bidding war of 2024. It's almost starting. Like the relationship between MJF and Tony Khan, where Tony will start to look for challengers to take the belt off MJF. And the last one on the last day will be the one to successfully take it. One can hope. And we also get a progression of the main event feud. MJF gets in an empty car, but says it's full and leaves Sammy out to dry. So yeah, we get a breakup of that partnership real quick. So then after that is the Adam Cole promo. So this is Cole's best attribute. He's such a great promo that he knows when to say things, he knows when to connect what he's saying to other words, he knows what words to use, he knows how to put them together. And then he says them clearly. He doesn't mumble just like Darby. Man calls out Jericho and then the feud intensifies. If only the beating on Brett was done better. This would be like a fire segment. Well, it still is, considering the debut that we have later, but this could have been so much hotter. So Cole demands Chris to come out. He gets impatient. He goes out to hunt for Chris, but then Jericho appears on the Titantron, where he says some usual Chris Jericho hypocritical stuff. It's honestly getting kind of tiring, but Jericho's a really good promo as usual. But then he sends out his boys. They beat Adam Cole's ass. Orange and Bandido, who just missed Adam Cole by a couple of seconds, come in and save him. I guess this is good. It sets up Garcia versus Orange. Feuds are again interacting. They're still outnumbered, so JAS dominate them. Best part about this is Ange using his suspenders to choke someone out. I think it was Cole. Like, who the hell uses suspenders anyway? Are we in the Prohibition era or 50s? Do people still use that in the 50s? I forgot. Oh yeah, American Psycho. I think some people use it there too. But yeah, after this we get the debut of SRS, Sean Ross Sapp. And this graphic was so weird because it does look like SRS. It doesn't look like just RS. I didn't know the theme, but it was really cool. End of Heartache by Killswitch Engage. And it turns out to be Roddy Strong. Has a little bit of rust since he hasn't been on TV, I think, for like months, until he was quietly released by the WWE, thankfully. But yeah, what an asset for ROH and AEW. He looks so strong, kicking every one of the JAS's asses, even the big guy and Jake Hager. Wait to get a feud going again. What a sick setup for the rest of the feud. Now we just need Kyle O'Reilly, and then Undisputed Era will be complete again. So after this, I already talked about the QTV segment, so let's move on to the next match, which is Jade Cargill against Taya Valkyrie. Okay, so if there's anyone who can believably beat Jade, who is not Chris Statlander, it's Taya Valkyrie. Just look at her. Just look how thick she is. Jade is so overpushed. She's not that good yet. She can be, since she has the athleticism. She just needs the experience and I think a Japan tour where she's allowed to take losses. And anyone who thought that she would have been a good AEW Women's Champion like earlier than this, or at this point, just wait till Botchamania posts 4 to 5 videos of Jade per match. She's just not ready for that kind of big spotlight on her. But this match was really good. This was her best so far, and I keep saying that every match. There's still a lot of things wrong, but this was really good, especially because of the stipulation of Taya not being able to use the Road to Valhalla. It really adds to the match, and it gives us a pre-built story, but if this is how Jade loses the belt over a similar finisher feud, you're doing something wrong. Jade needs to lose it in a personal feud, and I don't think like Taya is that over even after the match, or the feud isn't that hot yet. So yeah, this match was real fun. Jade was, I think, more impressive than Taya here, since Taya was a bit immobile, and she was more Divas awkward than Jade. I can't believe I'm saying that. Taya was also a bit tanky in her movements, and the match wasn't as tight as the standard in AEW. Needed a bit of speed. But yeah, we get some good stuff in the match. Number 3 is the Canadian Destroyer from Jade. Number 2 is the Superplex by Jade, and yeah, everything, like all of the top spots are Jade spots. Nice improvement, even though I said a lot of bad things about her in previous reviews and early on in this one. There's definitely improvement, but number 1 spot is less Jade, but this is performed by Taya, since it's like Jade pulling Taya's leg, and then Taya does a split on the apron. Taya was the one getting hurt by this, but this is her spot. The finish is a lot better than Taya just using the Road to Valhalla, getting DQ'd. That would have been a dumb finish. For me, this needed more cheating, since technically Jade won clean. Since Taya tried to use the Road to Valhalla, this gets her distracted. Roll up, Jade wins. You need to protect Taya more, and you need to have that plus what happens post-match, because post-match Taya goes insane. She tries to attack Jade's crew, and then she tries to road to Valhalla Aubrey Edwards, which she should have hit. This definitely got Taya more over, but not enough yet to beat Jade. It's still Chris's belt to win. So yeah, TV main event, this one was pretty fun, and was better than Jarrett versus Dax. So yeah, after this is Jamie and Britt. They explain away why Jamie wasn't able to help last week. It's because of her injury, and then thankfully, it doesn't look like she's actually injured, since we get a video at a con where they're there to confront Ruby Soho. So yeah, good promos here, and I love the lines by Jamie, or like one line by Jamie, where she says, "You're gonna have to put us in a bloody morgue." Oh my god, hopefully this feud ends and then Jamie gets someone who's as capable in a ring as her. Or, she beats Jade Cargill for the TBS title and then she unites the belts. And then instead we get tag titles. So yeah, after this is Jay and Juice versus Starks and Spears. So yeah, this is a simple promo, it does its job. AEW have yet to scratch the surface on Jay White. He needs to get in more serious feuds. He needs to beat Wardlow, honestly. They have a match against Starks and Spears, where Spears eats the pin, of course. I think Ricky will beat Juice, but eventually, Jay has to beat Ricky, of course. You have the former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion in your roster. And he's way above Starks. On the mic, maybe it's equal, but in the ring, it's not even close. So finally, for the main event, Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita against the Butcher and the Blade. So this really does so much for everyone involved who isn't Kenny Omega. Since Takeshita, the Butcher, and the Blade are all elevated by him from the lower card. And yeah, this shouldn't have been in the main event spot. This caused a drop in the viewers because you only have Kenny Omega there, and it's super obvious who's gonna win. And as for the match, it was pretty average. It's Kenny taking a break. So Danielson is on commentary and he says the line, "Man with the mask." So Danielson adds to his reasons on why he hates the Elite, being that they weren't hungry enough to go after the main belts. This sort of buries the trios titles and sidetrack. I think the trios titles needs contenders. They need to build up a feud next week if you want to keep the House of Black. But great character development where Danielson really let that loss against MJF affect him. He now clearly lost against MJF. He lost in the ring and out the ring, since it caused him to turn heel. So Blade and Takeshita start off the match with some stiff shots. I love the in-ring charisma by the Blade, and even the Butcher later. They're just missing some more tag team moves and bigger roles, more than just we are the team that cuts the ring in half. The faces work on the injured limbs of both dudes, which makes sense. Faces should not be dumb all the time, like that one person on Twitter said. It's still a competition. You need to go after the opponent's weaknesses. You don't have to be dumb or honorable all the time as in real life. Kenny and Konosuke do some great teamwork, very efficient stuff, especially those dives, which are number 3 spot in the match. Kenny's protected by heavy cheating from the heels. Kip has to intervene, he needs to hit a sick-looking outside dive, his springboard moonsault, and this is honestly number 2 spot of the match. This was just so good. Butcher and the Blade cut the ring in half, what their role is all the time. They need a bit more variety to their stuff, honestly, if they want to be something better. But yeah, they effectively cut the ring in half. It's nothing special. It's the usual stuff they do. They do some John Silver and Alex Reynolds combinations. But again, guys, you need to set yourself apart from all the other teams. Another team already does this, but faster. So yeah, top 3 spots of the match. Again, we have the Konosuke and Kenny combo dives. Number 2 is the Kenny Omega outside dive, and the number 1 is a powerbomb neckbreaker that's broken up, and then Konosuke almost spikes himself on the floor, but then Hurricane Rana on the Butcher, crisis averted. So the finish is Konosuke Takeshita with a running knee on the Butcher for the win. So post-match, it's confirmed pretty much that the Butcher and the Blade were not paid off by the BCC because that wouldn't make sense. Even as heels, they would gladly do their own beating. So yeah, Danielson tries to seduce Takeshita to the dark side. He botches a line where it could be either that or the BCC coming in from the crowd that pops the crowd. They beat the shit out of Kenny. They avoid Takeshita, which is a great detail. And right when they're about to screw Kenny, Bucks show up, and then we have a weird setup of events here. Since Claudio himself, confident in his abilities, acts like a henchman and gets double super kicked by the Bucks. I know you're the Ring of Honor World Champion. You're pretty much better than either of the Bucks 1v1, but those are still two dudes. While, like, Wheeler's right there, left to hold Kenny on his own, but unable to do so. You know what? Danielson should have made himself useful. He should have, like, assisted Claudio, or he should have just went in the ring and then took Wheeler's place. This was a bit of weird setup that could have been done better. Young Bucks come in and then they're about to screw Mox, but Danielson tells Konosuke to help Mox, and then he follows his orders. This is when you know it's for real. Konosuke's joining BCC. Impressionable young Takeshita proves himself to BCC. Like before, he's basically faced both Mox and Danielson before. He helped him out against MJF, and then now he saves Moxley. Like, dude literally faced Claudio, Moxley, and Danielson before. And now they baptize him with blood. Low blow, and then Mox cuts him open. And that's how we end Dynamite. So good. But it's not best segment of the night. Best segment of the night is still Sammy and Max. So yeah, for this Dynamite, I think it was better in-ring wise as a whole than last week, but not very much. For me, it's still an average Dynamite. I love the debut by Roderick Strong, so maybe I'm gonna make that top segment. No, Sammy and Max for sure still. But there was just more here. Not a lot of duds as well. So yeah, slightly above average Dynamite, a lot better than last week's. And it deserves the ratings it got, despite NBA competition. So yeah, that is it for the review. Like, comment, and subscribe for engagement. Share if you don't know me. Hit that bell notification for future videos, and please, like my shit.